Namaste viewers. Today we have Mr. Charanjit Singh, Fund Manager of DSP Tiger Fund with us. Charanjit has a total work experience of over 16 years in the financial services industry. He joined DSP Investment Managers, DSP Mutual Fund in 2018 as Assistant Vice President in the equity team. Earlier to this, he has worked with the BNK Securities, Axis Capital, BNP Paribas Securities, and other couple of financial services players. He is MBA in finance and also holds BTech in electronics and communications. He is managing DSP's infrastructure fund by name DSP Tiger Fund. Tiger in the sense the Infrastructure Growth and Economic Reforms Fund. Today, our discussion will predominantly be focused on infrastructure sector and the opportunities available in that sector and why one should look at that sector at this point of time. Welcome, Mr. Charanjit. Nice meeting you.
Thanks for having me on your show, and it's a pleasure interacting with Mr. Chockalingam and your investors. Thanks for this opportunity. So I would like to share my views on the infrastructure space. Yeah.
Sure, Charan. Before getting into the opportunities available in the sector and other items, first our viewers should understand what do we mean by infrastructure sector or infrastructure theme. What are the industries covered, segments covered in India, in your fund and in general?
Yeah. So I think that's a good question to start with, Mr. Chockalingam, because it will set the stage in terms of what all constitutes the infrastructure sector. Infrastructure is a very broad sector, and it's a key driver for the overall development of the Indian economy. So I'll just break it up first into broader heads, and then we get deeper into each of the subsectors. So when we look at infrastructure, there is energy vertical, there is transportation, then there is urban infra, then there are a lot of manufacturing capex related segments, and then there is real estate and some of the other capex segments. When we look at energy, it is all about power generation, be it through coal-based power generation, nuclear, renewables, which is solar and wind, and then power transmission and distribution. That's a very large part of the overall infrastructure capex. Second is transportation. What transportation includes is roads, railways, airports, and ports. When you talk about urban infra, you see metro rail is one of the key segments within urban infra. Then there are water utilities, wastewater treatment, sewage water treatment. When we talk about the manufacturing capex, includes cement, metals, chemicals capex, oil and gas capex, and fertilizer capex. When you talk about the other segments, it also includes real estate, which is a big part of the overall infrastructure story. Defense, government's capex is one of the largest segments. And then we have a lot of consumer discretionary plays which are there in the part of the overall infrastructure capex. Within this, there are a lot of inputs which will go into the infrastructure space, be it other smaller capital equipment, your electrical products, and commercial vehicles. So what we try to do is we try to map each of the stock to each of the end market which it operates in. And different end markets may have different cycles and different growth trajectories depending on the drivers for those particular segments. So this is in a nutshell how we see the infrastructure space in India. Yeah.
Okay. So in this case, you don't include earlier some of the funds or some of the fund houses were including financial services as a segment. So you are not including financial services from your point of view.
Yeah. So from the Tiger Fund's perspective, we have taken a call that we will exclude financials from the sector. Because if you look at on the street, there are various funds which have exposure to finance. Financials as a sector. Even DSP funds or the other funds on the street have financials as a sector. Which are the other segments or sectors which will exclude from the Tiger Fund are IT, pharma, consumer staples. These are the key sectors apart from financials which will be excluding. While we'll be including the sectors which are related to infrastructure and also including the economic reform themes, be it in chemicals, fertilizers, which are linked to the various economic reforms. So we want to run it as a pure infrastructure manufacturing focused fund.
Okay, sure. And in the past, 10 years or so, or 12 years, I would say from 2018, the infrastructure started seeing the downtrend, if I remember correctly. So in the past 12, 13 years, how has this sector performed? I mean, has it grown or has degrown? How has this performed, this sector?
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question from the perspective that we need to understand the entire cycle, where we are in the cycle, and what happened in the historically when we saw the capex super cycle. When did India see capex super cycle? Was from 2003 to 2007. What happened in that time frame? So in 2000, actually, investments as a proportion of GDP was only at around 29%. And when we reached the peak of the cycle in 2007, investments as a percent of GDP reached around 36%. Now in FY21, investments as a GDP is only at around 27%. So from the 2000s lows, again, we are coming back to lows in the infrastructure spending as a percentage of infrastructure as a percent of GDP is only at around 27%. When we look at growth rates from the investments cycle perspective, FY04 to 08, we saw a growth rate of 24% in investments. FY9 to 12, we saw only 12% growth rate. And FY19 to 21, we have seen that dropping to -3%. So from a super capex cycle, slowing down, and now we have seen a bottoming out of the cycle. Now, if we drill deeper, FY3 to 07 was a super capex cycle, which was led by power, global commodity capex, boom, telecom capex. These were the sectors which were driving. What was also happening is that the corporate balance sheets were expanding. So 2003 to 2005, we saw there were early signs of commodity price increases. There was also passing of the Electricity Act, which led to opening up of the power sector and a huge capex starting in the coal-based power generation capacities, then which was followed up by the power transmission capex. Government spending was pretty strong, and it was growing at a CAGR of almost around 23%. FY06 to 08, when we go and look at, strong private sector participation came in power, cement, and steel sectors. Commodity prices were on a very strong footing, and globally, the capex was picking up because of the commodity boom. There was also pickup in the residential real estate capex, which was driving the overall demand in the for these various products. But in 2009 to 2012, what we saw is that there was a excess capacity building up after the global meltdown. So demand started slowing down, and there was also domestic policy paralysis. So things just started slowing down, and leveraged players in power and steel, they started struggling. Then from 2013 to 2020, what we saw is that the commodity prices continue to remain low. Real estate cycle continued to remain weak for a longer time frame with excessive inventories. There was excess supply across sectors, and balance sheets were getting repaired. So a lot of companies were going through the NCLT phase, and the resolutions were coming through in this time frame. And there was more consolidation happening in the market. Now, when we look at the last 10 years, FY10 to 20, what we have seen is that the private corporate capex has remained flat. So in 2003 to 2007, we saw both the engines working, government capex and the private capex growing strongly. But then what we have seen is that private capex has remained stable or stagnant, whereas government capex has grown at a CAGR of 13% during this time frame. Government capex is dominated by central and the state governments and mainly focused on roads, railways, water, defense. These are the segments. Now, if I have to give a perspective in terms of how we have scaled up in the government capex, let's see the roads capex itself. In FY10 or 2010, it was 15,000 crores of capex in roads. In FY22, we are seeing 1,73,000 crores of capex in roads. Railways, spending 40,000 crores in FY10, and in FY22, it is almost 2 lakh crores of spending. In metro rail projects, it was 6,000 crores of spending, and now we are talking around 24,000 crores of spending by the central government. Water had a very small allocation of only around 8,000 crores, and now we have got 50,000 crores of allocation in FY22. Defense, again for that matter, was only around 50,000 crores of spending, and now we are talking about 1,30,000 crores of spending in defense in FY22. So what is happening is that there's a lot more positivity. One, that government capex has been growing, private has been, stagnant. Now, corporate balance sheets have, improved significantly. Banks' balance sheets have improved significantly, which is giving us the confidence that things are going to improve going forward. Yeah.
Okay, good. So, I mean, many of these industries in the past 10 years, still in spite of a lot of troubles, they have grown. That's what I understand from you. Okay, that is good. And how about, earlier I would say, I would put the question another way, say like health of these companies, the infrastructure companies right now. Earlier we used to hear a lot of companies, going bankrupt or they're being sold at a throwaway price, not able to manage, being shut down, a lot of things happening. And today, how is the infrastructure companies, their balance sheet or profit and loss, health, how is it looking like?
Yeah. So I think that's one question which we also focus a lot on in terms of seeing how the companies behaved in the last upcycle and what were the reasons for the failures for the companies. And that's also very pertinent from the risk perspective when we look at, picking companies from the risk perspective and what are the kind of risks that they are taking when they are running their businesses. Now, let's not also paint this entire infrastructure sector with the same brush, because then there are manufacturing companies which have not leveraged, which have maintained their balance sheets much more stronger and have seen a very strong cash flow generation. Let's look at the contracting or the infrastructure space. And what we have also seen is that in every cycle, there are new leaders who emerge, and the existing stronger companies who have maintained the discipline, they are able to come out stronger again in the cycle. Mm-hmm. Now, when we look at 2005 to 2008, there was a very strong infrastructure growth happening. The companies started bidding and taking aggressive risks. At the same time, they were facing right-of-way issues. Land acquisitions were taking time, and because of those delays, there were a lot of cost overruns. In order to show, or in order to deliver higher growth, companies started diversifying into unrelated areas. Maybe getting into power sector, taking more road BOT projects, or real estate development for that matter. Mm-hmm. And what happened is that from a cash contracting or a pure EPC companies, these companies became asset-heavy companies. Their balance sheets became leveraged. It got bloated. 2009, as we saw a recession hit them hard, the bad projects led to defaults by these companies. Mm-hmm. So that's where the real problem started. The demand started slowing down. The leverage starting, hitting them. And that's where we were able to see that companies who have taken projects at very aggressive margins, they were starting to see problems. And as projects got delayed, there were a lot of cost overruns, and they were not able to meet the requirements, and there were defaults by the companies. Mm-hmm. But so from 2014 onwards, what we saw is that government also took important steps in terms of, one, making sure that these issues which the infrastructure companies faced in the past, they don't get repeated going forward. 80 to 90% of the land has to be acquired before the project gets awarded. Mm-hmm. In terms of BOT, which is build, operate, and transfer contracts, which carry a lot of risk in terms of either the traffic or other risks which are there, the government came up with hybrid annuity model in the road space specifically, where we are going to get equal annuity payments, and it brings down your risk. Plus, banks also became much more stringent in terms of lending to companies which have a good track record and who don't take excessive risk. Mm-hmm. So what we saw is that there are companies which maintain the discipline, mm-hmm. and within the infrastructure space, like the framework which we have in order to pick the companies, we make sure the companies have a very strong execution track record. Mm-hmm. They don't do diversification into the areas which are not core to them. They are managing their working capital cycle well, and they are not getting into asset-heavy businesses. And that is where we see that even right now, mm-hmm. there are good infrastructure companies, and few of them even have net cash balance sheets, and the others have much lower leverage. Okay. They have strong order backlogs, because of it, they will be able to grow their earnings going forward.
Okay. Yeah. Overall, they are in a healthier situation, if I'm right, than what they were in 2008 and 9. And many of them have become disciplined, I do agree. And why do you think that the infrastructure will do well going forward? Because what are the factors that are being shown for this sector?
Yeah, so What we did is we looked at the 15 years of historical data, and we tried to look at what are the drivers for the capex or this capex cycle to revive significantly. So when we look at and identify those factors, one, the key building blocks. First is the bank's balance sheet. Now, if you look at the bank's balance sheet has got improved significantly and non-performing assets have come down. Second, if you look at the credit cycle, there we are seeing revival after a decade of slowdown. So we can see that the credit growth rate can start picking up going forward. Cost of funds has fallen to over 2 decades low, which is a very important factor or a very positive for the capex cycle to turn around. Other important aspect is corporate tax rate. Indian government has cut the corporate tax rate for the existing companies to 22% and for the new manufacturing units to 15%. I think this is a very critical success factor because it makes the domestic manufacturing more competitive versus geographies like Philippines, Indonesia, where we are trying to compete on the global scale with these geographies. So corporate tax rate cut is another important factor from the overall drivers perspective. While these are macro perspectives, but what we see is that the government is also very keen to drive the overall capex cycle. See, now what we are seeing is that households which are driving the consumption growth are seeing dip in savings and increase in leverage. So what's going to happen is that, and jobs are not getting created. So if the government has to grow the GDP, you have to start investing in infrastructure. And that's what is clearly visible from the government's intent when they announced the FY22 budget, where what we have seen is 22% growth in the central capex to around 5.5 lakh crores, which is 2.5% of the GDP. And this is 10-year high. When did we see this? In FY08, when it was 2.4% of GDP. Wow. And in the peak, in FY04, it was 3.9% of the GDP. So I think these are very clear indicators from central government side in terms of they want to drive the investments and push the manufacturing capex. Additionally, what we see is that capacity utilization, which is a indicator for the private capex addition. While when we look at this data at 63% capacity utilization, it looks low. But when we need to drill deeper into this. Cement sector, FY21 capacity utilization was 63%. But when we look at the capacity utilization for top 5 or 6 players, it is almost around 70% utilization. When we look at the steel sector, the capacity utilization is 71%. But when we look at the top 5 or 6 players, their capacity utilization is almost around 78%. So that is why what we are seeing is that there are capex announcements which are happening by, or which are being done by cement and steel sector companies. 75 million tons of new capacity additions to come from the cement sector in next 3 years. 25 to 30 million tons of new capacities to come in the steel sector. So these are again the factors which are giving us the confidence that infrastructure sector drivers are well in place. Apart from this, what we also believe is that reforms was another factor which we saw in the last cycle which led to pick up in the capex sector. We go back 3 to 4 years. What are the key reforms which government has done? One is GST, which led to a lot of formalization of the economy. Bigger corporates becoming bigger, taking much more share from the unorganized sectors. Secondly, we have seen the corporate tax rate cut I've talked about already. 15% for the new manufacturing units is really a game changer. Then there's a scheme, Uday scheme, which is for the reduction of losses in the discoms or the distribution companies, so that the power chain, improves and we start seeing more capex happening at the distribution end. For real estate, we saw implementation of RERA. And now what we have seen, the new scheme is the production linked incentive. What does production linked incentive do is that government is trying to focus that wherever we have a very high level of imports, we should start manufacturing those things in India. So government has earmarked 2 lakh crores for incentives to be given in segments like mobiles, chemicals, pharma, auto, room ACs, where we have seen significant imports. And what will happen is that to get these benefits, incentives, the companies will do capex of almost to that 1.4 lakh crores in the coming years. While this number may be small, but what we see is that there is a ripple impact in terms of the entire manufacturing ecosystem developing in India. Secondly, it also makes us more competitive in the global geographies as we develop more and more economies of scale. So what we see is that a lot of reforms have already happened, which are going to be the drivers for this capex cycle. But to summarize, I think the other important aspect is that the intensity of this capex cycle will not be similar to what we saw in the previous capex cycle. Because here the drivers for capex are like chemicals, pharma, renewables, where the intensity of the capex may be lower. In this capex cycle, we are also going to see more brownfield expansions than greenfield expansions. I have already got a plant, I go and expand it further. I've got a plant, I want to do more efficiency improvement in the plants. So these are the kind of capex what we are going to see going forward from the brownfield capex perspective. So what is happening is that the high capital intensive sectors are giving way to some of the newer, lower capital intensive sectors, but these are going to be the drivers for the next capex cycle as we see. Yeah.
True. I mean, some of these, as you mentioned, some of them are reforms, some of them are financial incentives. Tax reduction is a big changer. Of course, it was brought 2-3 years back, and then interest rates one of the decades low. Then China alternate people are looking for to some extent, and then PLI, production linked incentive schemes, and many of the reforms that you talked about. All these things definitely will be key drivers, are being the key drivers right now. As we go forward, actually. I mean, some of the green shoots are already being visible. Like steel industry is all-time kind of high in the last so many years. Cement industry is getting attention. All those things, it's visible. And one of the key sector, key segments of this infrastructure sector is road projects. One of our investors called some time back and told that I'm hearing, India is building like 36 or 38 kilometers per day. I'm seeing the documents. Is it true? So that's what I want to ask you, because I have not seen the data. But is it true that India is building such large, kilometers?
Yeah. So yeah, road sector has always been a big focus area from the Indian government's perspective. So if I give you a statistic, during FY21, actually we did build 36 kilometers per day of road construction. We did. The target was 38 kilometers per day. But because of COVID, it got impacted. Next year's target is going to be 40 kilometers per day of road construction. We have come a long way. If you look at FY16, we were doing 16 kilometers per day of road construction, and now in FY21 we are talking about 36 kilometers per day of road construction. Now, if I have to give a perspective of the highway sector, so over FY09 to 21, we have built almost around 92,000 kilometers of highways, which translates into 7,100 kilometers of highways per year, 19 kilometers per day of highway construction.
Wow. Okay.
If I look at our road network, we have the second largest road network in the world at around 62 lakh kilometers.
Oh.
But when we drill deeper and we look at highways at 1,36,000 kilometers is only 2%. Expressways is at around 1,76,000 kilometers. So what's going to happen is that highways, which is only at around 2% of the overall network, are going to see a continued spending. 40% of the total traffic is carried on the highways, which is only 2% of the total road length. The other aspect is that government has already announced Bharat Mala Pariyojana, which gives a visibility for the road contractors for another 34,000 kilometers of national highways to be built at the cost of 5.5 lakh crores. While we have a good visibility, I think the other question which I would like to answer is in terms of the financing. Where will the money come from? Definitely one aspect is in terms of the borrowing, which the government has on a consistent basis, the borrowing programs. Second is asset monetization. Asset monetization involves, if I have a ready road project where I'm tolling, I'll be able to sell it to other investors. So in national highways authorities or Power Grid for that matter are doing infrastructure investment trusts, where they are moving these ready assets into the infrastructure investment trust and freeing up their capital. So asset monetization will help the government raise money. Second is the creation of a dedicated financial institution. So government has already put in an equity of 20,000 crores in this financial institution, and this institution should be able to fund almost 5 lakh crores worth of infrastructure projects.
I see.
So I think from the financing perspective also, government is trying to address how various ways of financing gets created.
How long is the growth? I mean, is it for the next 3 years, are you seeing, or 5 years, or 7 years? Because earlier also we have seen that cycle comes up, then cycle goes down. All those things are there. That complication is there. So from an investor perspective, how long he can view this visibility, in this segment?
So I think when we started the discussion, I talked about the length of the cycle, which matters in each of these segments. And that is where when we are trying to build our framework and look at each of these capex segments, we try to look at a longer term opportunity growth horizon. Now let's start with power. Power was a big driver for capex in the last cycle, and coal was the big driver. Now power capex is again coming back, but it is being driven by renewables. 94 gigawatt is the current installed capacity in renewables right now, and our target is 450 gigawatt by 2030. So there's a long runway which is available for the renewable space power capacity addition. Road sector, like I talked about, 34,000 kilometers additional national highways to be added under the Bharatmala project, again gives us a good visibility from the road sector's perspective. Railways, which has already reached to 2 lakh crores of spending in FY22, is expected to do this 2 lakh crores of spending for the next 5 years. Why they are doing so much spending? Because one, they are electrifying. Current diesel lines are moving to electrification. Second, they are setting up new lines. The existing routes are congested, so there's a lot of decongestion happening. Gauge conversion is happening. Signaling is another area where what we are seeing is that the increasing thrust is going to be there from the railway side. So railways again, next 5 years, there should be a 2 lakh crores of consistent spending which should happen. Water is just a start, where what we have seen is that 50,000 crores for the first time the allocation has happened, and continuously we will see the increase in the spending on the water space as government goes ahead and starts building the water grid. Now, when we look at the cement and metals capex, cement, what we have seen is already announcements of around 75 million tons over the next 3 years. When we look at metal, there's a 25 to 30 million tons of capacity which has been announced by the steel players to be added in the next 3 years time frame. Apart from this, I would also like to highlight is that there is something called techno-infra. So while in the previous cycle we had these drivers, in this cycle what we are seeing is that there are new drivers for capex which are emerging. Digitalization or automation. So I have an existing plant, but I need to automate it to churn out better quality products, to make different kind of versions of products. That is where automation and digitalization is coming, very important. And this is a global trend which is catching up in India and has got accelerated because of COVID. And this is a need of the hour. This is a business need. Data centers. Every day, every minute, we are creating so much data, and with government's push towards keeping the data in India itself is creating a big demand for data centers. This is another part of the techno-infra. Capex related to PLI schemes, performance-linked incentives, 1.4 lakh crores of capex, though not a big high number, but still this will create a big, entire ecosystem of, industries which will set up because of the performance-linked incentives. Logistics, warehouse, these are again areas which we are seeing. So what we are seeing is that the multiple segments are showing, capex trajectory improving for the next 5 years time frame at least.
At least, okay. No, that's a good thing. And the data.
Another point which I would like to add is on the national infrastructure pipeline. So while this is one aspect where government has given us a clarity on their near-term planning, but national infrastructure pipeline, what it talks about is 120 lakh crores of capex to be spent by FY25. And where they are trying to do this spending is 40% is on transportation, which is roads, airports, railways. Energy is 20%, water and sanitation is 16%, and then there is a social infra, which is around 13%. So national infrastructure pipeline gives us a little longer term version in terms of how the government thinks about doing the capital spending. Lastly is on the exports. what we are seeing is that because of COVID, various countries would like to look at different supply chain options. Okay. China plus one strategy is becoming a new norm, and where different countries want to have diversification of the supply chain.
In the recent last week, I saw the news RBI banning MasterCard because they do not have local data center, storage, all those things. So that is a new upcoming field from an infrastructure point of view, and I do agree on that front. And now, there are so much opportunities, schemes, government policies and private capex, public capex, everything coming up. As an investor, a small investor is worried about if he can make some money out of this, and he is investing, taking risk, and make money something out of it. So for that, you do manage infrastructure fund, as we discussed earlier, the Tiger Fund. How this fund is set up and how you are managing this fund, if you can share some ideas, some information about that fund.
Yeah. So the Tiger Fund, if you see, is Infrastructure Growth and Economic Reform Fund. So I think the most important part is the process or the framework which we have made to identify stocks and how to make sure that the learnings from the previous cycle get involved in the process to selecting these stocks. So our process for this includes first, identification of the themes or businesses. Third, lower cyclicality. How we can reduce the cyclicality of the fund by adding secular plays, by adding companies which are in the fast-moving industrial goods segment, which are having a much more faster replacement. Thirdly, by looking at more simple businesses, which are again secular growth structure. Focus on execution versus narratives. So this is very important to actually reduce the risk, because you have to consistently look at the data in terms of the government spending, in terms of the trends for these themes, how they are panning out. So that's where we try to focus more on the execution of each of the theme what we pick. Leadership in the industry. Most of the companies which we try to pick are among top or 2 or 3 players in the industry, in the category. And lastly, innovation. What we see is that innovation or access to technology is again very critical for these companies to remain successful and provide us more durable returns. So apart from this, definitely we look at the financial parameters of strong balance sheet, net cash flow from, positive cash flow from operations, high ROE, ROC. These are also what we look into. The other aspect is, how do we look at the risk in these funds? And how do we try to minimize that risk so that we are able to generate a consistent, durable alpha? And we don't have to worry about timing the cycles. And how we do that is, one, see, thematic funds are concentrated strategies. They are just focused on particular sectors. So that itself is a very concentrated risk which you are taking. How do you diversify that is by taking more of a basket approach, where you try to pick up stocks within the same thing in a basket approach and good quality stocks. So these are the factors which we believe help us reduce the risk in the fund and make sure that we are able to generate consistent or durable returns. So to give an example of the basket approach, now the first basket is automation. So there we have almost around 7% weight in the fund. Second basket, like I talked about, is fast moving industrial goods. There we have almost around 8.5% weight in the fund. The third basket is consumer electricals and durables, where we have around 8.7% weight in the fund. Construction, where we have almost around 14% weight in the fund. And lastly, cement and building materials, where we have almost around 20% weight in the fund. So this is how we have different baskets, and which helps us reduce the risk and pick stocks in each of these baskets, and which together account for almost 60% of the weight in the fund.
Okay. And approximately how much in this fund you manage right now, Charan? 2,000 crores?
It's 1,100 crores.
1,100?
Yeah.
Okay. In the Tiger Fund. Okay. And is it like if some investors are interested in investing, would it be a good approach to go give bulk amount or invest bulk amount, or go through the monthly investment SIP approach? generally is preferred for this type of fund that you are managing?
Yeah. So see, one thing, if you look this category itself, before I get into what is the right approach, another thing which I also like to highlight is the parameters of this portfolio and how it compares with the other, segments. Now, when you look at the DSP Tiger Fund, in the profit growth rate in FY23 is going to be around 13%. And from valuation perspective, the fund is having a PE of around 17 PE on FY23 basis.
Okay.
So the investable sectors which are, in this theme are available at cheaper valuations versus the other sectors which have much higher valuation and which have been the favorite for a longer time in the past cycle. And as the cycle revives, we see that the growth rates should pick up based on the visibility which we have in the different subsegments. Now, coming on to the question of whether one should do a SIP or a bulk investment, we would definitely recommend that SIP is the best option. I myself co-invest in this fund and do an SIP on a monthly basis, because we are looking at a story of 3 to 5 years time frame, where as the cycle picks up, different subsegments will start picking up at a different pace. So that is where SIP on a regular basis is the best option. And I would definitely be highlighting to the investors that co-investing is very important for us, and that is what I also do in the Tiger Fund.
Very good, very good. And how unique is DSP Fund House in managing this infrastructure? And that is the one question. And then I have one more question, if you can answer this.
Okay. Sure. Yes. So I think the uniqueness is in terms of the framework and the process which we follow, which I highlighted. In terms of learnings, which we have seen from the last 15 years of data, which sectors, which segments, and which kind of businesses are able to perform well at what time frames. How we can reduce the cyclicality in the fund, and how to bring more consistency in the returns in these kind of thematic funds. How to reduce the risk. I think that is where we are trying to make sure that, because it's very difficult to time the cycles as an investor. So how do you make it a consistent or durable return opportunity?
So other than that, just to share with our viewers, to give a personal touch, if you would like to share something that you like, you dislike, and you are interested, your hobbies, what do you do, all those things, family, anything you want to share something, with that we can close.
So yeah, so I think that's an interesting question. Yeah. So definitely, I'm very passionate about investing. For me, actually, it is about, more about picking businesses, good businesses, which you can own and be part of the journey. I think that's the one most important aspect. If I have 2 kids, so on the weekends, like to spend time with them. I run marathons. So, and marathons running has actually taught me, not only about just being physically fit, but also about the investing journey. Because you can take a lot of, learnings from how you run your marathon, being one, staying healthy, maintaining your, pace, and consistency. And I think those are the factors which I would like to, or principles which I try to also apply when we look at investing. And, and that marathon running definitely is one of the hobby which I enjoy.
Thank you, Charan. Thank you for taking time out and speaking for our viewers. And definitely, you have given an in-depth analysis for many investors. This would be helpful. Even students who are viewing this video, they will have a lot of information that they can gather from you. And from an investment perspective, definitely, investors will love this, wherever they are. And thanks for taking time out and joining us today. Thank you very much. Meet you in some other place.
It was a pleasure speaking to you. Yeah, thanks for hosting me. Pleasure. Yeah, thank you.